Welcome back everyone to A History of Horror. Today we're going to be looking at the grandfather of zombie movies, Night of the Living Dead, directed by George Romero.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I had the honor of meeting Romero at a convention in Gettysburg just a few years before he passed away from cancer. I remember being nervous and excited to finally meet him, and I was surprised by his humbleness. He was one of the inspirations that made me want to become a filmmaker. There are other zombie movies that existed long before Night of the Living Dead, including White Zombie and to some extent The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. However, up until now, the term zombie referred to a person stuck in a trance, usually by voodoo or some kind of hypnotism. They were typically made to be slaves or manipulated to kill the master's enemies. And then came Night, the first movie to make a zombie a being that rises from the dead and to have a taste for human flesh. It's interesting to point out that they're never actually called zombies in the movie. Instead, everyone refers to them either as ghouls or those things. The movie opens with Barbara and Johnny arriving to a cemetery to visit their father's grave. They bicker with one another for a brief moment before suddenly being attacked. There's no provocation and barely any build-up. Earlier films would have probably gone into detail about why the dead were coming back to life, but here it just comes out of nowhere. Barbara manages to escape on foot while the zombie shambles behind her. She makes it to an isolated farmhouse where she meets a group of other survivors who are just as confused and frightened. The story then revolves around them trying to stay alive inside the house as the number of zombies outside continue to multiply. The group would be fine if they could just work together, but they can't stop fighting.
We may not enjoy living together, but dying together isn't going to solve anything.
The characters Ben and Harry stand out as the two main adversaries. Most audiences will side with Ben, but both men make good points. However, their constant battle over who is the alpha continuously tears them apart.
Now, you get the hell down in the cellar. You can be the boss down there. I'm boss up here.
Night of the Living Dead was also groundbreaking for its casting decisions. This was the height of the civil rights movement, and having a black man take the leading role was unheard of in 1968. It was suggested that they play up the fact, but Romero thought it would be more progressive if they didn't make a big deal out of it. However, he said in later interviews that he regrets not talking more about it at the time. The power of the film lies in the anger and disappointment at the state of affairs in the country. The war in Vietnam was still raging, segregation was still alive, and on the final day of post-production, the film crew heard on the radio that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. It was clear that the love revolution had not worked. Due to naivety, the filmmakers failed to put an official copyright on the print, so the movie has been in public domain since the day it hit theaters. It's a shame they didn't receive a dime for its popularity, but in a way, their error made Night of the Living Dead into a household name. You can even find the digitally remastered version on YouTube. I posted a link for it in the description. Night of the Living Dead has long been one of my favorite movies, however there's some other horror classics from the 60s that I'd recommend. Carnival of Souls, The Last Man on Earth, and The Birds, another gem from Alfred Hitchcock. Next week we'll be entering the 1970s and looking at the splatter shock films that came out during that time. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.